So, are we still going to be doing the quilt police thing in 2025? Really, quilters? Okay, I guess that's what today's video is going to be about. I have some things to say about the quilt police. Hey Star Stitchers, I'm Kristen from I See Stars Quilting, where we keep quilting fun, approachable, and totally judgment-free. Today, we're going to talk about something that needs to be stitched up and put to rest, please. The so-called quilting police. Because if you have ever proudly shared a quilt and then heard, that's not the right way to bind a quilt, or hey, those points don't match up, this one is for you if you have felt in any way, shape, or form judged for the way that you put your quilt together. Today's video is going to be beginner-friendly, perfection not required, and loaded with a lot of heart behind the words that I'm going to tell you today. You know them. It's not a real department. They sure act like it, don't they? Yeah, the quilt police sure act like they're a real department. They're clipboard in hand, badge made of fancy bias tape, here to write you up for using the wrong stitch length on a Tuesday or something ridiculous like that, right? Okay, so I have to tell you that I am from Texas. I grew up in the South, and growing up, I was always taught, if you don't have anything nice to say, zip it, right? You should just hush. Unfortunately, not everybody has learned that lesson. The first thing I want to talk about is why the quilt police show up. Sometimes people speak from insecurity, or they think there's only one right way to do things. But quilting isn't a rule book sport. It's an art. It's cozy, it's imperfect, and it's a joy-filled art. Another thing that I want to talk about today is what to say when you inevitably come into contact with a quilt police person, whether they mean to be a quilt police person or not. Here are a few polite but punchy little gems to keep in your pocket for when you do have that encounter. One of my favorite ones is, thank you for your feedback, but I am more into fun than flawlessness on this quilt. That's interesting, I guess. I'm just a rebel with a rotary cutter. Well, my quilt's not auditioning for Quilt Market this year. That's on my list for next year. But right now, my quilt is just busy keeping my family warm. Oh, honey, did you mean to say something kind and it just came out sideways? I'm sure that's not what you meant, right? Because you wouldn't want to hurt my feelings. Now, it's been pointed out to me on more than one occasion when a quilt group feels more like a high school cafeteria. And let's talk about quilt groups for a minute. Most quilt groups are warm and welcoming and filled with like kindred spirits, but every now and then you might find that you walk into one and suddenly it feels like you missed the memo on matching uniforms and all of the specific quilt speak that you are supposed to have ingrained into your body, okay? Cliques happen. They happen naturally in life. They can happen in any environment whatsoever. And sometimes they happen intentionally, and sometimes they happen unintentionally, okay, in a quilt group. Here's what I want you to remember. If you walk into a room and you feel unwelcome, that is not a reflection on you. It's not a reflection on your worth. It is a reflection of the quilt group's insecurity. You have every right to be there in that quilt group because you are a quilter. Your talent, your creativity, and your curiosity belong in a quilt group. I don't want you to shrink yourself to fit somebody else's comfort zone. But I also understand you don't want to walk into an environment where you're not welcome, okay? So instead, I want you to find one person who does smile at you and sit by that person, okay? Sit by that person. If you have to be there and you've already signed up for like a whole year, or you've signed up for the rest of the afternoon or something, sit by that one person who is nice, okay? I want you to ask questions and show interest because the right people will show up. And I know I tend to be a, glass half full type of person, but I truly believe that there are other people out there who will meet you where you're at. And if they don't, that's not your quilt group, okay? But your people are out there, and you don't have to lump all of us quilters in there with the people who aren't quite so nice. right? I do want to say one thing in defense of the quilt police. Let's give them a little bit of grace. Some of the quilt police out there really do mean well, truly. They might have a background in traditional techniques, or they have been to a billion quilt shows where every stitch and every seam gets judged under bright lights and white gloves, okay? That is a particular world, and that is a particular skill. And hey, that is valid talent, okay? There are two kinds of quilters out there. The ones who are creating masterpieces for competition and critique. And then there's the other people who are creating and making memory quilts and baby gifts and scrap busting cuddle quilts for the couch. This world has room for both of them, okay? Both types of quilters. We need both types of quilters in this world. Just because somebody holds themselves to a high standard doesn't mean everybody else has to hold themselves to that same standard. And just because you're sewing with love instead of rulers, it doesn't mean that your quilt is any less valuable either. And yeah, some grumpy quilters, they might mean well when they say the things that they say, and maybe they don't mean well. But here's the thing. I do believe some of those sly remarks come from a place of wanting to share knowledge. They just perhaps forgot to sprinkle in the kindness with it. So next time you encounter the quilt police, try responding with grace if you can, okay? You can say something like, that is really good to know. I did it this way because it worked for me, but I'll keep your tip in mind. Quilting is really like cooking, huh? Everybody's got their own favorite family recipe and how to do it. So if you've had a run-in with the quilt police and you may have wanted to tuck your tail between your legs and run off and cry, let's talk about how to come out of it as the better person, okay? When somebody throws shade at what you have worked hours and hours on and something that you are trying your best and you put out in there in the world to show everybody else, your biggest power move is choosing not to throw some shade back. Just stick with me here for a minute, okay? I want you to pause, I want you to breathe, and then I want you to respond. Or don't respond. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the joy that you have created with your own two hands. If you have another suggestion on how to reply to a quilt police remark that maybe was not asked for, keeping in mind that kindness is always a winner in my book, please feel free to drop it down in the comments down below. I would love to read some of your responses. What has happened to you, because I've had a lot of those moments, and I will say I'm not always on my toes, but yeah, I bet you have some interesting stories out there too. I would much rather come from the perspective of choosing to be the cheerleader quilter in the group. It doesn't take anything out of you to be nice to somebody else who is learning, who is trying. I'm going to share a quick story with you that I will never forget. Early on, I was at a quilt show and they were doing like a little show and tell thing. And so I brought in something that I had worked so hard on. I knew I was a beginner. I knew it wasn't perfect. Looking at everybody else's quilts that they had brought in, I was feeling really kind of ashamed, embarrassed, for being so proud of this like kindergarten level quilt works, right? It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to being perfect. It was a mess, okay? But this one sweet woman, she came over to me and she asked to see it, and I held it out, and she looked at it and she smiled at me so sweetly, so kindly, and she said, "You put your whole heart into this, didn't you? You are doing amazing, and this is incredible. I love what you have done." She didn't point out the fact that my crooked seams or the puckered border that I had tried to put on there. She saw the heart behind my work, and I will never, ever forget that kindness that she showed me. And that is the kind of quilter that I want to be in this world, just to make somebody else feel loved and accepted and comfortable for just being who they are, mistakes and all. It's safe to try new things. It's safe to share, and it's safe to learn in a space where you don't feel judged. That's what I want the Star Stitcher community and the Icy Stars Quilting YouTube channel to be about. Remember, you are not weak for feeling hurt when you have a run-in with the quilt police. You are not petty for noticing that dig that they try to throw your way. But you are powerful when you choose kindness anyways. Okay? Forgiveness doesn't mean you let it slide. It means that you don't let it stick to you and stay with you or change how you behave in the future based on that one tiny moment of time given to you by somebody else. And moving forward with the same positive attitude, here is how I believe that we can help shift the culture. Even if it's just a little bit, you can be the reason that somebody else keeps quilting and doesn't give up. Really and truly, I believe it with all of my heart. Okay. You need to make it your mission to compliment someone else's work every time you are in a group, whether it's an online group or an in-person group. It takes 10 seconds and it might last a lifetime in somebody else's memory. You don't have to change the whole world, okay? We don't need to change the entire world. We just need to change one little corner of it. And friend, that is enough to make a huge difference in another quilter's life. So next time somebody tries to patrol your patchwork and give you all the rules of the quilt police, just remember, you don't need their badge of approval. You're a star stitcher, and we don't quilt for perfection. We quilt for love, we quilt for learning, and we quilt for joy, right? If you agree with me on that one, hit the like button and subscribe to my channel to join this Star Stitcher crew. We've got plenty more real talk and quilting magic coming your way. I post videos every single week sharing tips, tricks, and tutorials from my own quilting journey. And if you ever feel like you're quilting alone, you can come join me in the Stitch Sister Inner Circle. It's a warm, welcoming corner of the internet. I'll put the links down below in the description box underneath this video. And hey, let me know in the comments, have you ever had a run-in with the quilt police or a prickly quilt group? Okay, let's laugh and let's learn together. I'll see you next time, my friend. Please remember that one bad experience does not make for the entire rest of the group and how we operate, okay? So keep looking for that quilt group where you are accepted and you are loved just as you are. I will see you next week, same time, same place. I'm Kristen with ICStarsQuilting.com. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you soon. Keep shining bright. Bye.